Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's roadmap live stream for Train Sim World. Hello, everybody. Please just give us a shout to let us know that you can hear the audio okay and everything is all hunky-dory. Not too many transitions for me tonight, hopefully. So hopefully what you see is what you get for the rest of the stream. I'm forever joined by my two partners in crime. I have Matt Pedalston to my left, and I actually got it right this time. And I have Adam Lucas to my right.
Hello, good to see you.
And yes, this is the return of the door in my background as well. Everybody was looking forward to it, and I'm glad that I could have the goods. Okay, so all good on the audio, brilliant. We'll get started. It is the roadmap live stream, and we are doing these monthly now. First Thursday of every month. I know we moved that a little bit because we now release on Tuesdays, and releasing and putting a roadmap out on a Tuesday probably not the wisest thing to do. So we've moved it to a Thursday. Hope this is a better time for everybody, and yeah, we'll continue with this moving forward. So that means in November we'll be doing the same thing. You know I love my admin. To kick things off, I'm going to do some admin and then we'll get into the roadmap and we'll talk about some of the things that were on the article today. If you want to check out the article, it's quite a long one, but we have a couple of graphics and a couple of too long didn't reads if you're interested in just seeing the summary bits. If you go to our website or our social channels, you can find out all of the information, or you can read it along as we go through it. That would be fun as well. So tonight we are going to be talking about the roadmap, obviously, and that is live, but we're also released the loco bundle pack on Tuesday. That's a long week so far, and that's available for everybody now on all of our platforms. One of the things that we wanted to just quickly show you as a starter for 10 is actually, so we got some feedback from you guys around the RHTT wagons and the amount of spray that they were putting out, and we just wanted to quickly show you a couple of work in progress images from the current builds to kind of show you where the spray now is. Here we go. So as you can see, it's a lot more voluminous, a lot more impressive than perhaps what you were seeing beforehand. So that's currently in production. I'll wait until it goes through again. You can see that in action. Matt, can you give us a little quick update on that just before we move into the roadmap stuff?
Yeah, I mean, by looking at the feedback, it was when I saw it myself on the stream, so I was just like, that should be a lot more than that. So I got the team to go back and take another pass at it, and what you're looking at here. So I wanted to run it up to the 57, 60 miles an hour, which is the limit for running the spray, and as you can see, it's significantly more. You don't have to go and squint your eyes to try and find it now. It is most visible while driving. So yeah, it's significantly better, and hopefully will be out in the not too distant future.
Lovely. Okay, so let's get into what we wanted to talk about with you today. So quick summary of what you might have missed from the roadmap this week. Again, I have a nice little graphic for you, everybody. Oh, I'm doing well tonight.
JD came prepared.
Hey, here's one I prepared earlier. Here is the graphic that we used. I really love this. I think this is great. It's like a destination board that you might see at. I use King's Cross because it's kind of one of my local ones. But I really like this. Well done to our creative team. You can see we have a new UK route, a new US loco, a new German route, and you can see there's a new UK route developed by Rivet Games as well. There are a couple of additions to the special projects team, and we'll come on to that in a second. And as you can see, we've got a few other bits and pieces that have been added throughout. So we've added in the new Journeys pack, not on this graphic, but we've added in the new Journeys pack for TSW3. There's going to be 3 separate individual add-ons from here on in, but if you've already owned it in TSW2, don't worry, you'll get it in TSW3 as well. Just needs a little bit more time to create the store pages and stuff and the dependencies. And then we've got the HST Livery Designer functionality in the Special Projects team section, which we'll come on to in a bit. Audio improvements for the BR187 and a few other bits and pieces that we've already talked about in other different areas, but that's a good little starter for 10, I think, for the rest of the live stream. So I'm going to get back to the face cams because I want to see all of your lovely faces. Let's start. I would normally start with Matt, because obviously Matt is the exec producer. He can normally give us quite a good little insight into everything else that's going on. But I thought actually let's mix things up a little bit. Let's go with Adam first today, because one of the things that we wanted to really talk about in this live stream was the special projects team, previously known as the preservation crew. So Adam obviously heads up this team, and we've talked a little bit about how we wanted to change up what their remit was going to be and how we wanted to utilize them best for Train Sim World 3 and how that might end up looking like on a more kind of day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. So, Adam, can you give us a little elevator pitch as to what the Special Projects team is all about?
So for the most part, it is going to be the same team. So I still have Adam, Martin, and Ryan working with me. We have unfortunately lost Jake, who was a vehicle artist. So he has been replaced with a new guy called Vincent, who's going to be joining us on the vehicle art team. But pretty much, yeah, it's the same varied, wide-scoped skill set, and we remain separate from the main development team. And effectively, instead of being entirely focused on the back catalogue, we're also going to be looking at other projects, other developments and processes that still don't sit under the main development team. So it is still going to be maintenance of the back catalogue, but it's going to be more focused and more driven by community movements and feedback. So where previously we were doing a month-long session on a particular DLC or route, we will simply be looking at feedback and trying to get those turned around as quickly as possible. And one of the main drivers of that is, for anyone that has been watching these for a while now and has followed the team, we were struggling with updates and getting them out. And that's because of their size. So hopefully doing much more smaller targeted fixes, then we will be able to piggyback onto other updates that go out. And then after that, it's going to be supporting the third parties, which is another element that we're going to be talking about this evening. So that's going to play a much bigger role.
Yep, and also Training Centre, which is obviously one of the kind of jewels in the crown of Train Sim World 3. We've seen a lot of really nice feedback from players already, and we've got a lot of space to use, and we've got a lot of opportunities with the Training Centre now that we can actually utilise. And again, Adam, I understand your team's remit is that we're going to look at what we can do with the Training Centre, how can we incorporate things like tutorials into it, and also use the physical space in a slightly different way.
Yes, exactly. One of the key bits about the first stage of the training centre was really laying the foundation, making sure it was good, making sure the right reactions were coming through, and we'd got what we'd wanted out of that foundation. And now we're starting to look forward and see where do we want to take it, how do we want to utilise those spaces. We do have some ideas. And we do have some targets we want to go for. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be more about that as we progress forward. So yeah, really looking forward to that. The team are really excited by the reaction, and they had an awful lot of fun making it as well. So.
Absolutely, and we're all looking forward to seeing it. It will also, of course, be on the roadmap if there's anything that we're going to be implementing on that side of things. The other thing that I
wonder, this is crazy, and no one hold me to it.
No.
How far are we into the live stream? 8 minutes?
I wonder if we can put the roadmap on the notice board in the training centre.
He's gone rogue.
Oh.
It's a neat idea, though.
We could have the destination boards a la what we just had
there.
Yeah,
not my roadmap, but this roadmap is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Oh, I like it. I mean, we've got cat ears. We've got cat ears on a headset, so maybe we could get that on there. Oh, I like that idea. Okay, we might run with that.
Board.
There was a point to doing this live stream.
No promises.
Okay, but on a more serious note, I think one of the things that, again, the community have picked up as someone who engages and speaks to the community on a regular basis, I know how frustrating players found it when things like the Preservation Crew releases weren't being released in sort of a timely manner. And I think for all of the great work that happened there, it just wasn't quite working with the way that we developed on the other side of things and how we put builds together. So this feels like a much more sensible and, I suppose, targeted way that we can look at all of this stuff in the future, and means that some of the things that we know are challenging or difficult, or particularly on kind of a really niggly little basis, actually we can get those out in a reasonable amount of time. And hopefully you've already seen some of the fruits of those labours with the update last week, with the launch release that came out with TSW3. A lot of that content came from the Preservation Crew / Special Projects team. So expect that kind of thing to be more frequent moving forward too.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so now that we've done the little introduction to the special projects team, I'm gonna go back to Matt because obviously we've announced a few new pieces of content. Um, as ever, we're going to announce them. The roadmap isn't for announces of new content. It is to tell people what we're working on. They will be announced in due course, and hopefully not through a Teams leak. I've already killed all of my teams for this for this live stream. I have literally these are the only things that are open on my computer right now. But there are. I've completely lost my train of thought.
You haven't got enough tabs open, you see.
No, I know. There are lots of different things that we're currently working on. We're not going to go into too much detail on them today, but I guess my question to you, Matt, is: are you excited about the things that we've put on to the roadmap today? The three sort of first-party pieces of content: the US loco, the UK route, and the German route. I'm not going to ask you for any tidbits or anything like that. Are you excited?
Oh yes.
So
oh yes, totally.
You can quote us on that one, guys, later. Oh yes. So all right, that we'll leave that one there. But there are a couple of little clues in the codes that are next to the routes on the roadmap. If you want to check those out, and there's a little forum link on the roadmap where you can sort of start to decipher them and start to make a few assumptions or speculate about what might be to come. And who knows, some of you might be right. Okay, before we get into dangerous territory, I'm going to move swiftly on. Let's talk a little bit about save game, Matt, because save game I think is one of the things obviously that has been talked about for a long time. I think probably in a focused way for the last 6 to 10 months or so. Let's say 8 months, split the difference. And last week we were able to release the save game toggle. Obviously we'd originally decided that wasn't something that we were planning to do, and having seen some of the feedback from players, having kind of understood some of the reasoning why they were looking at wanting it back, we obviously have listened, and we've put it back in as of last week. What was it that kind of changed your mind?
So prior to the reason we took it out was an overwhelming amount of feedback and our own experiences of save game just not working. And a lot of customer support tickets for people who are having lots of problems with it, that were having problems that we then realized, oh, hang on, a lot of these problems where someone's saying something doesn't work, it's because they've resumed a save. So it's kind of, well, we need to take this seriously, and if it doesn't work, it has to come out. So that's why it went out. And then once it came out, of course, then there was a lot of feedback on the forums about, well, actually, no, it does work for us. For these things I do, it works all the time. And so we thought, okay, let's split the difference on that and just say, we'll put it in, but we'll default it to off, and you can turn it on if you want it. And that way, those of you that get on with it are knowing what you're getting into. You know that you might have problems with it. Those that don't know they might have problems with it, it won't even be there for them, and they won't know how to turn it on even necessarily, which kind of meets the requirements that I had and the company had for new players having a good experience, and if you use a feature it should work, but for the long-term players, putting it back with the appropriate caveats so that you open that door with fully knowing what's going to work and what isn't.
Yeah, and we've obviously, when you've toggled it on, there is a forum thread to go to as well if you do have any problems. We've set that up. It's in technical reports. If you do experience any challenges, it really helps us to be able to understand where some of these things might happen, because I think we're looking at some core game improvements that we think will have a really significant positive impact to this, but it won't deal with absolutely everything. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, so the first tranche of fixes that we are working on or finishing up at the moment, the fixes are done. They're just coming through QA. In fact, they're just about finishing through QA at the minute. Is all core fixes to the internal, sort of like the core interior of the game. So this is looking at things like how the paths get reset back up again how the dispatcher works when it resumes the game. It's looking at how the trains get reset back up into whatever state they were in, and that's working out, is this train at the front of a train, the back of a train, is it a player train, an AI train? And some of the logic there actually wasn't setting the trains back up correctly. So a train might have actually restored itself thinking it was a player train and therefore not be able to move or something like that. So a lot of that stuff. Now those are core fixes that affect the entire game, everything. I'm actually expect with the nature of some of these fairly fundamental improvements, I am expecting a notable improvement in save game performance. Some of the things that have come out of the testing that we've got at the moment, which are other elements that I've been expecting to see, are things like when you save the game with the wipers running, when it's restored, the wipers aren't running anymore. And those are per train fixes. So that sort of thing would not be covered in the update that we'll be doing for this first tranche of fixes. The first tranche of fixes is the former stuff. It's all of the core stuff, and actually will probably mean that it'll be slightly more niggly type issues that will still remain. The core things about will you be able to get to where you're trying to get to should be in a much better place. I know I'm going to say that with crossing just about everything, but so far the QA testing, and it's the Xbox beta group have now got their first beta for a TSW3 as well, and they are already testing the save game fixes, and we're seeing some good signs of feedback from what they're talking about there. So first tranche of fixes, all these core things, and then we'll start looking at some of these more chain fixes that are more per vehicle and per gameplay and per signaling system, those kinds of things. Once we get this out, it'll be really key for you to let us know you've got the update and where you're still having any challenges, or where things that didn't work now are working, so we can sort of see the step forward and get a comfort feeling for how are things. But we're not taking our foot off the gas on this. It's still a thing that still needs work.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of, I guess, fixing it's our own downfall really, because I think because we've had so much content that's gone into game over the course of the last 5 years or so, that's obviously had incurred legacy issues throughout the course of the things that we've released. If we'd fixed it at source, obviously we wouldn't have had this problem. But we are in a position now where we're kind of having to piecemeal it together. But we're hoping that this first batch or first tranche of fixes will significantly improve things, whereas everything else is then just a bit by bit sort of breadcrumb as we go through the rest of the improvements. And am I right in thinking that is currently in the build for the next release, going through testing at the moment?
Yeah, the core fixes are the ones that are in the release for testing at the moment, and they're assuming all goes well, and I think they're signing it off tomorrow. I don't know when that means for a release at the moment, but QA are I think currently looking at finishing up the testing as early as tomorrow. So I don't think it'll be too much longer before this is good to go, assuming all goes well. I don't find anything tomorrow.
Awesome. And a kind of a more longer term question, Matt. If we were to At what point do we add save game back as a non-toggleable thing that you can just access whenever you want to? Is there
actually
a tipping
basing
point?
that a lot more on player feedback? If players are sort of saying that, for the most part, they expect it to work and are surprised when it doesn't, that's time to turn it on.
Okay.
By default, that's essentially going to be. So I'm going to be looking to players to, and again that doesn't necessarily signify stopping working on save game. It just like when is a good time for it to become default. It's save game is one of those things. And I've been talking to the team about this, that there's never a time to stop looking at save game, because we'll do a load of work and we'll get save game in a great place, and then we'll need to keep it there, because this is where some of the problem have crept in, where it hasn't garnered the attention it needed on new releases to make sure the new trains restore correctly, the new routes restore correctly. So this needs to be a process going forwards. Now, there's no end to this process, essentially.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, when I was writing the roadmap, as I say, save game is something that I've dreaded writing about for the last 4, 5, 6 months. But actually, this feels like a really positive change, and something that players will see fairly actually quite soon. That there is progress being made.
Yeah, I mean, you should, like I said, you should notice. Every time, if you've got any sort of situations which haven't restored correctly previously, once this new patch goes out, then go and try those things and see if they're working better for you, because that's the sort of feedback I'd love to see, is whether we fixed those problems, or are we still yet to see them, and that way we know where we can keep focusing on the issues that you're experiencing. It's great if we fix a bug that no one's found, but it's not necessarily useful. What I'd like to do is make sure we're fixing the bugs you're experiencing as a priority.
Nice one. Okay, all right. We'll leave save game there and we'll move on to Add-ons Manager because, as I say, that's kind of the other longer term thing that was kind of transformed over from TSW2 to TSW3. For those who don't know, we actually released it on TSW2 a couple of weeks ago. And the response by and large has been positive. We had some feedback from players around a couple of issues that we're still kind of ironing out in the back end. There was a patch last week that fixed a couple of them. When we get to the point where we are happy that all of that stuff has been fixed, then that will be ported into TSW3. But when we're in the position where we're at the moment, there is still work going on the TSW3 version of this. It is still going on. It's just that, as I say, we're trying to do it in tandem with making sure that the TSW2 version is also where it needs to be, and then we can just sort of make it sound much easier than it actually is, but porting it into the TSW3 build. So
yeah, we've added additional engineering resource. So essentially, we've got one person working on TSW2 build, looking at feedback and resolving the issues. And again, I think we're in a much better place now with the latest version of that. And somebody else looking at porting the core of it over into TSW3, and then working out how. And we're retasking some of the UI engineers to work on, because that's where some of the core of actually the issue is reintegrating it into the new UI so that it makes things appear at load and unload at the right times. So and that's underway as well. So it's like we're not waiting for anything; we're getting on with it as fast as we can.
Cool. Okay, well, we haven't got any sort of release date news as yet, but actually we are well aware that it has rumbled on for a long time, and that people are having to make decisions about which add-ons they want to have in their collection and which ones they currently have to kind of put on the shelf. And as we release content fairly regularly, that becomes more and more of an exacerbated problem. So we are well aware that it is a difficulty, and also there are some memory improvements that come with it as well that we know that would be really welcomed by a group of players as well. So we know how urgent it is, and we are putting a lot of effort into making sure that we can get it to you as soon as we can. Okay, UI. This was something that we've perhaps not really touched on very much when we've done roadmaps before. But we've had a lot of feedback from the UI. A lot of it's positive. And there's a lot of people who have given us a lot of really interesting feedback based on other games that they play, or just general accessibility improvements, or I guess quality of life improvements. So keep those coming in. They're great, and a lot of the things that we're looking to improve have been based on off of that feedback. So please keep them coming in. As we've said before, we had an update last week which covered a few UI improvements. Again, the full list is on our website and on an article on our website. There is a mouse sensitivity slider which currently isn't working, but it is going to be in the next update functional. And one of the other kind of UI settingsy things that's been improved is that you can remove tutorials from the quick play menu as a toggle in the settings as well. Because again, that was something that players were giving us a lot of feedback about. They didn't want to play tutorials in quick play. Completely understand that. You can toggle them out now. But that's not where we're stopping. We've got so much more that we want to do, and I'm going to come to you, Matt, to talk a little bit about some of the things that, in particular, we wanted to get out of this or the next release or the next couple of releases, because there's a few highlights that we think players are going to really like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I was expecting a little bit more from you from that, Matt. But I tell you what I have in my pocket is
You want to lead and I'll answer, or do you want me to drive it? It's fine either way.
I have something that might help. So we are going to do. What am I going to do? I've got a little slideshow. So I'm going to show the slideshow, and I'm going to let Matt narrate over the top of it, because we've got a couple of things that we wanted to show you.
20 seconds behind the slideshow, just to be aware. You have to tell me which slide is showing.
Okay, I'll prompt you. Okay, so I have the Livery Designer, the multiple versions of the same logo. Was just switched actually. That's not been very nice, is it? It's the stop and go via that stuff.
Those things that JD's talking about.
Yes.
So there's one of the changes is about adding route names into train select menus and Livery Designer screens. So there is a mod that someone put out which added the 3-letter codes into a lot of the train names, so that you could see whether it was the SPG version or the HSC version. But that's great for hardcore users. There's no use for a lot of players that have no idea what HSC means, horseshoe curve. And so what we've done is we tasked the UI design team to come up with it. So you can see on the Livery Designer screen, it says there underneath the train name, what route that train came from. What's the source of that train? If it's a Loco DLC, it refers to the route that the Loco DLC is intended for. And then the second change was the go vias and stop icons that have bugged many players, including myself. The number of times I have stopped at go vias and gone at stops, and because the icons are the same. Well, we put different and much clearer icons now, which is significantly. I'm already feeling the difference as I play with those in there. So that is very good. So yeah, hopefully you can see what the team have done in terms of adding the route names in for everything to make it clearer which of the 8,000 Dosto cab cars you are selecting, and which of the 185.2s that you're selecting. So no, I'm really pleased with what's gone on there, and that will just carry on now in all new content. It's already been set up for every piece of content that's already out in there as well, so fully populated.
Lovely. All right, I'm going to go back to the face cams now. But yeah, those are the kind of examples of some of the things that the UI team are looking at, and not necessarily just UI, but also kind of settings and customization, all that kind of stuff. We'll come on to that in a little bit later. But we've got a lot of other things that are coming up in future patches. So things like adding pause menu prompts back, so you can save from any pause menu tab. So save menu even. So you'll be able to.
So currently, one of the bits of feedback we got from that was when you pause the game on a console, you've got to tab left a couple of times to go to the options and then press, which wasn't ideal. But you know, it made sense at the time, and user player feedback on that has been, what were you thinking? Slap, slap, slap. We put the button on the bottom again where it was previously, which was to put the Y button to save, or the triangle, I think it is on the PlayStation controller, to save. So you can pause, save, and then get back to the game with the minimum number of clicks. So yeah, that'll be coming.
Cool. Completing training modules, scenarios, and services will now show them as complete in their journey mode too. That was something that I saw got quite a lot of positive feedback from the community when we had it out in the roadmap. And then a few things that are further down the line, things like saving your sort by settings. So when you return, the game's already sorted back to what you previously set it to. That sounds like a very good little quality of life improvement. Upgrading the search bar functionality so that special characters are returned when the English keyboard equivalent is used. So if you've got LGV Mediterranee, for instance, and you want to add the E accent on there, then obviously that will then be okay.
Any German.
Any German. I don't know. I don't know why I chose LGV when there were so many German ones I could have chosen.
One French.
I keep searching for Würzburg and I can't find it.
Yes.
And because it's you with dots. So I spoke to the UI team, and they've made it now so that you also matches you with dots, and all of the other similar ones. Makes life so much easier.
The amount of times that I've written the word Würzburg in the last sort of 6 months and still not worked out how to do the keyboard shortcut for U umlaut is ridiculous. So there's a few things that they're working on. There's a full list on the roadmap, and that's not the exhaustive list either. There's lots of other little things that hopefully will be nice little treats for you when we get to the updates themselves as well. We're also looking at the color of the selected icons as well. I know that there's been a bit of feedback around the color.
A light grey.
A light grey. So we're looking at that as well as an option. That's likely to be a longer term improvement though, because there are lots of things that touches, and a lot of things we need to make sure still look okay if we change a color or a shade of a color. So
there's two factors on that one as well. One of them is the selected color is grayed out, essentially. Is boiled down. That's what we've ended up with, and it's one of those things that we didn't fully appreciate was the wrong answer until everyone said, but why is grayed out mean selected? That makes no sense. And yeah, you're right, it doesn't. So the team are looking at that. The other thing then, which still is not necessarily fixed by changing the grey thing, is if you've got two options, which one is selected and which one is not selected. So we're also going to work on making sure that is clear as well, particularly for colorblind people who have got some more of a challenge working out. So light grey and dark grey, which one of those is the one that's selected? So we're going to make that find a way to make that more clear as well. So there's the two factors of that, and they're being worked on at the moment. Well, we're in the design phase at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. UI and settings will put on the side, but it's going to be something that we're going to talk a lot more about in roadmaps and things like that, because it's something that I think we are all recognizing as a really important thing for all of you who play the game regularly. You want to be able to get from A to B as quickly as you need to with as little obstructions as possible, and also for the things that you use on a regular basis to work in the way that's intended, or that's as smooth as possible. So we're going to keep working on that, and we're going to keep going with stuff and update you on the roadmap accordingly. I mean, case in point, Lee's just put, are you guys aware it takes 20 clicks to change weather in Scenario Planner? From leaving Scenario Planner to changing weather, then back to Scenario Planner, that's 20 clicks per button pressing on Xbox One. So that's another.
Actually accidental, because there is no way to set the weather. You're just doing it because when you set the weather, it coincidentally doesn't change it to some. It's a missing feature from Scenario Planner that you can work around, but we're looking at one of the things we want to do in the future, long in the future at the moment, is we want to look at fixing that problem. We're well aware of that problem. Trust me.
Okay, good. All right, let's move on to performance. So this is going to be quite a short section because there's a couple of things that we want to talk about, but obviously this is kind of a similar story, I guess, to Save Game, but with one kind of key difference in that there's not really I guess, a core thing that we would want to do with performance. It's more about chipping away at improvements for performance. We know that there are some 8th gen players who are saying they're not getting an awful lot of FPS on some of the routes. We are aware of those, and we're going to be looking at what we can do to improve those on kind of like a chipping away basis. But it's unlikely that we're going to be able to do an update which is like a full sweeping thing which is going to make everybody's lives as easy as it possibly can be. Again, Matt, I'm paraphrasing, but is that about the long and the short of it?
Yeah, we've got a couple of people looking at performance side of things, and profiling is very much along those lines, to try and figure out where the time is going, and what we can do to resolve that. Because there have been some changes in terms of the performance of the game, and so they're being looked into.
There is one thing that I wanted to touch on though with performance, because it might not necessarily be relevant for right now, but it's going to be something that's going to be really important moving forward for us, and that's auto testing. We've talked about this a little bit in previous live streams about when we've been talking about QA and how we want to kind of improve what we end up releasing to you guys. And auto testing is a really interesting and potentially really good way for us to improve that QA and that development process. Now we're going to talk about it tonight in relation to performance, but there are a lot of other applications that we could use, or we will be using this for, and we'll go into that perhaps in a future roadmap. But I wanted to talk about it specifically in relation to performance today. Matt, can you give us a little bit of a summary on what auto testing is and what applications it might have for something like testing performance on a route?
So if you imagine that we've got a collection now of, I don't know, 30 routes. I don't know how many it is. We've got a lot of routes, 40 routes. And any change anywhere in the core game could have an impact on anywhere on any of those routes. Realistically, the chances that you would spot that are virtually none. If it might have only affected one. We have had instances where players have reported a performance on a route has suddenly dropped, and it's because of a change we made somewhere completely different, and the combination of how that would have an impact hadn't been observed by the developer submitting the change, because it's a complex system. So rather than relying on everyone remembering how it's all going to work and figuring out what might be the impact, one of the goals of auto testing is to just constantly check it and report, oh, that got a lot slower. What's going on? So every night, we're just starting to roll out the auto testing and build it at the moment. It's all custom built. None of this is off the shelf or anything like this. It's all custom built. So this is part of the task our engineering team are doing, but it's a separate engineering team to the ones working on the game. So it's not getting in the way of bug fixing. And what they're doing is they effectively take builds, put them onto PlayStations, onto Xboxes. It runs the game. It then spawns it to each of the low spawn points and looks at the frame rate, saves the memory performance, GPU calculations, all of these various bits of information, grabs a screenshot, and then we get a report every day of graphs of overall performance. So you can see if performance has gone up, gone down on routes, if memory usage has gone up or gone down on routes. So particularly helpful while we're making a route, because we can see whether or not as all the assets start getting piled onto the route, the frame rate starts tanking, and it's okay, we need to figure out why that is and go back and optimize it. So it gives us a lot more, and it's across the entire route. So every day, it's like you're automatically coming in the morning with an overview of, well, after yesterday's work, here's how we sit. But then we also have it running on at the moment 7 or 8 other routes, so that we can keep a picture of what the sort of some of our older content is looking like, and we can see, oh, okay, so actually, not only did the new routes got really bad, some of the older routes got really bad. Okay, what did you change? Go back through the change list, and that one's caused the problem, which means that we can find and fix these things within 24 hours now, rather than it actually sometimes getting out to player releases and so forth. So this is a big step forward. It gives us a lot more holistic visibility of what's going on. And then the other aspect that it helps us on performance is if you take a snapshot of one route, we can go through and work out actually on a given route, where are all the heavy tiles, where are all of the this asset, the average is X thousand assets on a tile, this one's got 100,000. Okay, what went wrong here? It might be an editor bug has caused an asset to be placed 999,000 times too many. I literally had instances in the past where every asset on a tile got tripled. And they were all over the top of each other, so you couldn't see it. But actually, the asset load was triple. So there's no way of seeing this except frame rate was terrible. And now we can see it. We can see graphs. We can see heat maps on the route telling us where all the busy tiles are and all the easy tiles are. So that gives us just, again, you just look at a tile map. It's not what I'm expecting. Let's go and have a look at that, rather than flying up and down the route, watching counters and really unscientifically trying to work out where there might be a problem. So this gives us huge visibility and insight into as we develop routes, but then also monitoring some of the stuff that's gone out again in the past. So and there's other aspects to what we're doing with auto testing. I'm going to cover that stuff later on because it's not strictly about performance, but this is something we are going to be doing more and more and more with. It's proving itself time and time again to be super useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think retrospect is obviously a fine thing, and we've seen obviously with a couple of the routes that we've released in the last 12 months or so, there have been some real challenges with performance. And I think if perhaps we'd have used this technology a little bit earlier, we probably would have caught them earlier and therefore been able to fix them before sort of they made them out to players. But as I say, this will hopefully help us moving forward to be able to do more of because the other kind of side to this, I guess, is that if you're doing more testing on an automated basis for that actually frees up the QA team's time to be able to test things that, say, Adam's team might be sending through to them, the quick fixes and things like that. So there is kind of a secondary benefit to doing something like this as well.
Yes, yeah, and the other elements relating to service mode that we're looking at mean that we can put in changes that might have wider implications. So some of the fixes we're looking at for save game and so forth are things that we can now confidently auto test across the entire catalog overnight, which is just game changing. It means that suddenly we're not thinking, oh, that's 3 months of testing to prove that 5-minute fix was valid and didn't break everything. So
Yeah.
it's freeing up a lot of time and enabling things. Yeah, exactly. So it's really, really cool, really, really useful. I mean, this is a process to develop. We are not at the end of this story. We are at step one of this story. But even at step one of this story, it's already sort of validating this is absolutely the right way to go. Keep doing it.
Yeah, and Matt gave me a little crash course in what he was able to get from this sort of thing, and even on the performance side of things, I was like, yep, this feels like a game changer. So I was suitably impressed, even if I didn't really understand what I was looking at. But it certainly looks good, and we'll talk a little bit more about auto testing in the future, a future roadmap, and some of the applications that we might be using it for Train Sim World 3. Moving on, Adam, I'm aware I've not got to you yet, but I've got one more section that I want to go through with Matt, and then we'll talk about some of your stuff. So shadows and draw distance is another thing that has been talked about quite a lot by players. Obviously, within Train Sim World 3, it is, in that sense, fairly similar to what you might expect in some of our previous games, and there is a reason for that. It's primarily, again, we've just come from the performance conversation. It is primarily a link between those features and performance, and they're kind of inextricably linked. At the moment, performance has to take priority, and that means that, as I say, when we get to a point where we're happier with the performance, or we are in a position where we're confident that things are good for as many different players as possible, then we can look at more of this kind of stuff moving forward and utilizing things like longer draw distances, or shadows on rails and things like that, which I know lots of players have been asking for. But there are a couple of things that we are still looking at though, Matt, and these are mentioned in the roadmap, but just so that everybody watching is able to kind of follow as well. Things like trees from distance having shadowing. That's something that seems like it should be quite a minor thing, but I would imagine, again, there's a little bit more to it than that.
Well, the thing is, until you get in, so there's the sphere around you where shadows apply, but until they get near into that range of having a shadow, they're flat. These are they're billboard trees. There's no depth, no substance to shadow on them even by the distance field shadows. There's nothing there, so they just look like these flat, oddly lit things in the distance. And so one of the team has actually been working on putting shadows onto those. So trees will have shadows all the way into the distance. So that's one of the things that's being worked on at the moment, and the early results are looking very good.
And that doesn't impact performance at all.
No, because it's just built into how the tree looks.
Okay, cool. And that's I assume then that's not the case for something like an adding a shadow to a rail, for instance, or
no, in that case, that would be a dynamic shadow. So that's right. Slightly different. Now we are looking at, again, one of the things we want to look at is what are the options for the shadow on the rail, because actually what we found was if you turn the shadow off, from the cab's perspective, it looks a lot better. Actually, that little bit of shadow at the bottom is more annoying than it is anything else. The problem is that at the moment you can only turn the rail shadow on and off in the editor by editing the track and setting a property on the track and regenerating the track. So it's not something we can do actually as a runtime setting in the game, and it looks terrible actually. If you turn all the shadows off and then take a screenshot of the outside, it looks like the track and the train are all weird and there's nothing grounding them you need the shadows there. So there's stuff to look at there that the team need to look at, and there may be more efficient ways of doing a shadow on the track than there may be. So we're not going to rule anything in or out. It needs the team to actually spend the time and get us the right answer.
Yeah, and I think there's investigation that needs to happen here. We were talking about sort of a slider for draw distance, for instance, and if you were willing to take a hit on performance, you might be able to get a longer draw distance. But obviously, that might not be the best way to do something like this. There might be a better way that actually everybody doesn't have to compromise on performance, but actually still gets a pretty decent end product for it. So I think there are lots of different avenues that we can look through for something like this, but it will take a little bit more time than us just being able to flick a switch and say, this is what we're going to do. So
and whatever we do, we need to then, again, this will be where the auto testing comes in. We'll enable all this stuff and then wait to see what the auto testing is and compare all the frame rates. Have they changed? Memory usage, has it changed? And then we can make sure, because what we don't want to do is take the routes. So some of you are having some problems with like memory crashes on certain platforms, on say London Brighton. What we don't want to do is make that worse. We want to be making that better, not worse. And things like shadows are in the candidate of things that will increase memory and decrease frame rate, increase the frame time.
Seems like a win-win.
So it's there's we need to be careful what we do, make sure we do the analysis. Autotest will support a much more broad and scientific analysis of that stuff, but we know that, for example, we did some early testing with distance field shadows, which have always been in the Gen 9 platforms and PC anyway, and we did some testing a little while ago where we pushed that right out, because at the moment it's set to its minimum value. So we tried turning that all the way up, and our early testing showed very little impact on memory and no impact on frame rate. So that's one of the areas we're going to look at to get a win on shadows. But we need to prove that our early testing was one route looking at one thing. So again, let's make the change, put it into the auto test, and check it on 15 routes on all of their spawn points, and just see if that spreads and that looks right on that. So there's a lot to do, but we're starting to build a tool set out now that means it's all actually more achievable.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a quick question related to performance and crashes and stuff. By by Yana Dunk talking about the crash on exit. I assume you mean the Unreal crash on exit of the game. That I know. I mean, Matt, I'm sure you're aware of. I think we flagged it a few times as a community team. Is that something that we are investigating and looking at? I mean, I know it's only on
On
its
the
clash on
engineering team
exit,
to
but
look at, it's we believe it's something related to Dovetail Live, but I haven't seen any further updates. So but I know that's in the engineering team remit to go and look at.
cool. Okay, we're looking at that then. Adam, welcome back. Lovely to have you with us. I'm going to move over to you next because we're going to talk a little about some of the stuff that your team is working on and also our partners are working on as well. So let's start, shall we, with the news that the HST is coming to Livery Designer. And if you haven't heard it yet, so we've got some handy little pictures to transition through for you. So while we do the little slideshow, Adam's going to talk a little bit about the HST being on Livery Designer. Take it away, Adam.
So the HST is on Livery Designer. Yay!
You were waiting for about 25 minutes, Adam, and you did that.
So yes, this is something that's obviously been very highly requested by the community. Really pleased to see it. It's definitely a train that I personally also wanted to see, and many at Dovetail wanted to see as well. So these screenshots are really just playing around in the editor and seeing once the parts had come together, and it was Jake, who unfortunately has left us, was working on and bits he had implemented, just seeing how does it work if I put different colors in places, if I put different shapes and so forth. You can see on the nose there was a very weird zone that I couldn't seem to get textures into from various places. So it just really trying to play around with the train. Maybe it was my approach, but I wasn't trying to go for anything fictional. I did jump in and do a few different liveries. This one being after several iterations. But yeah, it just shows the kind of process we go through when we do add Livery Designer, and yeah, really looking forward to it and what people are going to do with it, and all the amazing trains that are going to come out as a result. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yes, the train will appear in Livery Designer as 2+4, 2+7, 2+8 formations, as well as the 43 on its own as well. Let me cut back.
I mean, do you want me to just explain that a little bit, if that doesn't make sense? Because I realise that
please do, because I'm reading it off of the script.
Thing. So basically, 2+4, the way there's always been contention about whether the high-speed train is a diesel multiple unit or a locomotive and carriages, because there are obviously multiple engines within the high-speed train. So the way many have referred to it is it's 2+4, that's 2 locomotives plus 4 carriages. And then there are different variations of that train depending on what line it's running on. So 2+7 carriages and 2+8 carriages is another way of referring to it. They were the ones that we put in to start testing it, and then another great guy at Dovetail, James Lewis, who does a lot of our articles and a lot of community stuff, pointed out that while people may want to paint the train and the whole train and be able to copy liveries between carriages and the locomotive, some people might want to just do celebrity locomotives. So we've also put the single locomotive in as well, the Class 43. And yeah, I have noted in the chat that people are mentioning about ScotRail, which is 2+5. So I'll certainly look at that and see what we can do on that front. It is very early testing stages at the moment. We're on, I think, the second iteration of implementing it. So we've already gone through 2 rounds of feedback, and I need my new artist, Vincent, to address some more issues. So a lot of the ones that are on those little screenshots have now been addressed, but there are a few other things that we need to deal with. And then we'll have it out to players. It is being done in the TSW2 version, so it will be able to come out to TSW2 first, and then, sorry, not first, but it will be able to come out to TSW2 as well as then TSW3. So we're not holding anything back on that front. But at the moment, I don't have any kind of release dates. I don't have any kind of time frame. It is being worked on, among other things. So yeah, as soon as we can get it out, we definitely will.
Cool. And some people have already got a version of the HST on their Creators Club already, because there's a modded version that somebody has managed to grab from some source files from somewhere. That is going to be removed with this release as well. So if you have one and you want to keep it, save it. But as I say, it will be removed with this update as well, because we want everyone to have like the one the proper one, and the one that actually we have released for this purpose.
Yes, yeah. There's no point really in having any defunct content hanging around when you've got the flexibility of being able to do all kinds of designs that you'd like. So, and yes, I have also seen the other numbering, the numbering issue on the 43. We're that's part of this update. We're hoping to get fixed as well. So yeah.
Lovely. Okay, brilliant. Let's talk about some of our partners then, shall we? Because again, one of Adam's team's remits as the special projects team is to also look after and liaise with our sort of third-party partners, part of the partner program. And that can say as many words beginning with P as I can in about a sentence. But we're working with obviously our kind of tried and trusted, the likes of Rivet, Skyhook, but we've got a few interesting new updates for the partner side of things, and we wanted to share them with you this evening. So first of which is that Alan Thomson simulation will be coming to, or will be starting work with us on Train Sim World, which is very exciting. And as I say, we hope Alan and his team will be able to bring all of their experience from Train Simulator. We know they're kind of very revered amongst the Train Simulator team, to Train Sim World, and produce some really interesting and exciting things for you to enjoy. There's a little blurb about them on the roadmap. I'm not going to read it all because it's not long, but it's obviously I don't want to read just from a screen. You can check out a little bit more about their history on the roadmap article. But Adam, obviously that's a really great opportunity for us to kind of provide some content that perhaps we wouldn't have been able to beforehand.
Yes, absolutely. A key thing, as I'm sure everybody knows, is that Dovetail can do so much, but then also there are some incredible talent out there in the community, and there are some very long-standing developers that make fantastic stuff. And yeah, the more we can get involved with Train Sim World, the everybody wins really. So really, really excited that Alan Thompson Sim are coming on board. I can't tell you the number of times I've had to explain that this is a different company to Thomson Interactive, if any of you remember that name, and the Alan Thompson that obviously was already close to Dovetail Games operations.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are two Alan Thompsons, funny enough, and spelt the same way.
Yeah, I got very confused with that when we.
Yeah, it's so that's been really cool. I'm really looking forward to that. Obviously, they do target modern stuff, so I'm sure players will be able to gauge the kinds of things to expect from them. But yeah, that's effectively over the busy period of Train Sim World 3 and the transition from 2 to 3, apart from supporting the back catalogue coming over, my team has been supporting all the third parties and getting them transitioned over to Train Sim World 3, getting them up to speed on the different features and functionality that comes with Train Sim World 3, and now that we're up to it, onboarding more third parties. So it's absolutely amazing. Really excited.
Absolutely, and it is the Alan Thompson that streams on YouTube and Twitch. We weren't sure if he was going to be streaming tonight, but I think he streams on Tuesday and Sundays, so I'm sure you'll find out a little bit more about it on Sunday.
Yes.
We also have news on Just Trains and Train Sim Germany as well. They have they're working on some routes. They are working on electric and diesel traction routes, and but we're not putting that on the roadmap yet because it's not progressed to a point where we're happy with kind of throwing it out there at this point. We want them to kind of take their time, spend as much time as they can getting it right, and because particularly for Just Trains, it'll be their first piece of content for Train Sim World, so we want it to be great. We have had news though that TSG and Just Trains have expanded their teams working on TSW, which is always good to know as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to pick up on one comment that I've seen, that the Alan Thompson simulation does have a reputation, and what they're interested in, what not they're interested in. But I can confirm it was ATS that approached us about joining in. So my only response can be that rather than not being happy with potentially where they think Train Sim World is, they want to be a part of taking it forward,
Yes.
which is really, really exciting and really motivating. You know, that's one of the reasons we're really welcoming them on board. Yeah, we're really looking forward to what they want to bring, and we'll support them as far as we possibly can.
Absolutely. And final thing on partner updates, we'll do this on every live stream moving forward because, again, we're getting to a point now where we have quite a few things that we need to update every time round. We also kind of have a little bit of other news that we're going to dangle in front of you like a carrot, is that we do have another partner that we are speaking to and that we want to bring into the TSW lineup with, and they'll be bringing a new country to the table as well.
Mm,
But we're not
yeah.
going to talk about that tonight. I've kept my Teams chat well and truly closed for this one. So we'll be bringing you that in a future roadmap. It might not be the next one. It might not be the next one after that. But there are conversations that are going on.
Yes, it's in incredibly early stages where Alan Thompson's team has the software. They're looking at things and we're talking to them and taking them through the various aspects. This new developer has only just been in contact and we're just going through that admin stage at the moment.
Wonderful. Okay, and just one last bit on partner bits and pieces. We put the 187 audio onto the roadmap as a special special projects team initiative. We're now working with Skyhook to get that audio into a better shape, so then we can release it for the 187.
Yes.
No release date as of yet, but again, we'll update you when we know more. Okay, I'm going to take from over that side. I'm going to go back to Matt. Let's talk a little bit more about some TSW3 core bits and pieces. So these are going to be slightly more quick fire. We're not going to go into too much detail on any of these. But let's start with accessibility, because obviously it's a thing that we're treating very seriously here at Dovetail. We want to try and make sure that anybody who, for whatever reason, is struggling to engage with our game or finding it difficult to play, has a way for us to be able to tell us, and a way for us to be able to improve their experience so that everybody can play Train Sim World. So what we have done is we've opened up a forum thread on our forums, funnily enough, where I enjoy watching Matt's sort of slightly delayed reactions to some of the little asides. What we're going to be doing is set up a forum thread, and if you are having problems engaging with the game, or there's anything in particular that you're finding really tough, then let us know, and we'll add it to our list of things that we'd like to do in the future, and you might see it coming up in a future patch. And by accessibility, Matt, would you be able to give a quick, I suppose, summary of, because I know that when we launched the thread, there are a few things that came up that we probably didn't define within the areas that we wanted to define it in. Can you give us a quick little description by what we mean by accessibility?
So generally speaking, the term accessibility refers to making something accessible for, say, let's say, for example, if you have color deficiency, if you've got motor control problems, if you've got hearing problems, it's normally about those kinds of things. Some of the feedback, probably good, at least half of the feedback we've had has been actually in the opposite direction, about the game would be more accessible for me if you made the HUD disappear completely and don't tell me anything about how to play the game and so forth. And that's actually the opposite of what accessibility is trying to do, which is, this is where things become big fonts, and this is where things become high contrast colors and optionals. These are all options. I must stress, the game is not suddenly going to become giant fonts and high contrast colors, but it's about making sure we have the right options in there so that however you play the game, you're able to engage with the game, and the game is not going to be difficult to play for what I would consider a silly reason, in terms of, like, the game could just do better for you. How can we do better for you so that it's better so you can actually engage with it? So it's really looking for, on that thread, and there's been some really, really good posts actually, getting first-hand experiences. And I am looking for first-hand experiences, or if you've got some really close second-hand experiences, rather than general, I think it would be good if. It's, well, I suffer from this problem, I have this way of doing it, and this is the problem I have. That's great for us. One good example there is someone on the forums was talking about dyspraxia, and how actually this is where having every single function that you need the player to do being a mappable key, even if it's not mapped by default. Everything should be, and there are some functions which you have to interact with which are not mappable currently. And for us able-bodied people, this is absolutely not a problem. It's just, fire off with the joystick on the controller, use the mouse. But if you can't use a controller or a mouse, or they're really uncomfortable to use with any degree of precision at all, you've just made that train completely unplayable. So that kind of information is just like, okay, that's really good to know. Let's make that a priority to fix. And so all of the other things that are related to that, we've made some steps in the past on color deficiency, for example, but there's more that we can do there as well. So read the thread and contribute your experiences and tell us, give us your thoughts on how we can help.
Yeah, and in those mappable keys, for instance, or those mappable controls, that I think that is useful for everybody. That's not necessarily just an accessibility thing. I think a lot of people would find
A
that
lot
very
of things
useful.
are. I
Yeah.
mean, another one that's come up is joysticks. And we get a lot of requests for adding joysticks, but actually, again, joysticks can become a way that you can then, they're actually access. Microsoft has this thing called an Xbox. Oh, I can't remember the name of it now. They've got this gigantic controller, which looks like and it's basically an accessible gamepad that you can then plug other devices into with giant buttons and so forth on it. So that if you don't have the motor precision to be able to do something precise, and I tell you, we take for granted how much control we have over our fingers and so forth to operate thumbsticks on controllers. But if you don't have that, then these bigger controls make life so much easier. So actually having direct joystick input can mean that you can use levers to control things, nice big controls. It's not just about making that glorious custom cab and so forth. It's actually, it can be a really enabling thing for players as well.
Yeah, someone mentioned voice descriptions in the chat as well, and that's obviously that I think would also fall into that category. One of the other things that does as well, which we've seen mentioned, is things like the light adaptation, which perhaps for people who are photosensitive or something like that might find a challenge. And things like, I know we had somebody that mentioned about the wheel blur toggle as well that we implemented sort of a week after release, was giving them migraines because of the way that everything was put together. So we're looking at, say, on the light sensitivity side of things, or for the light adaptation side of things, what we might be able to do to make that a little bit more I guess acceptable for people who might be photosensitive. So
Yeah, the challenge with the adaptation is you can't turn it off.
Yeah.
Because of the light and the dark. If you turn it off, basically everything goes dark. So everything needs to be, it does need to be there, but there are a number of tunable options within Unreal's eye adaptation feature. So what we need to do is work out, well, what and how do we expose of that into the settings so that you don't need a degree to figure out how to use it as well. Because what people want is a fairly simple, either a basic slider, not 15 sliders to get the right tune. That becomes then too complicated. It's so powerful, then no, you can't use it. You want something easy. And then we can figure out, like I said, there are a number of options. We just need to find the right settings, and then we can make them available.
Yeah, and Crazy Killer in the chats mentioned Special Effect, and if you're not aware of Special Effects work, they are a fantastic charity that works on accessibility and allowing disabled gamers to have an opportunity to play games like anybody else would. So they are great, and I think I've worked with them before, and I think that there might be something that we could have a little chat about. So weirdly enough, I actually messaged one of my contacts there yesterday. So watch this space. Let's talk about the derailing / buffer issue. This one's a little bit of a complicated one to offer a little bit of context for. But again, we know players have been mentioning it, so we thought we'd talk about it tonight. This kind of started with Spirit of Steam and has kind of mutated into lots of different types of things, which we're trying to work out at the moment. But again, Matt, can you give us a little bit of context as to what we mean by this?
So, at a broad level, this is where we, on the one side of the fence, the train came off the track. And that's really, why do I need to know anything more than that? On the other side of the fence, well, it turns out there's 5 different reasons that could have happened. So, broadly speaking, if you're driving along and the train comes off the track for no good reason, that's a problem. You need to tell us about it. If you've got a video of it happening, then great. We're kind of we have had issues in the past, but it escalated when Spirit of Steam came out, and when you put the brakes on in the 8F, everything would fly into the sky. And the fix for that seems to have caused more problems in other places. Now, again, there's been further fixes which have improved that, but we're still left with some lingering issues. But even before Spirit of Steam, there were problems where people were showing me videos of driving the Gatwick Express on London Brighton, applying the brakes to come into a station and flying off the track. And again, this is not 100% of the time by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still too often. It shouldn't be happening at all. Now, the issue with when you derail when you're applying brakes, I think we have a handle on that, and there is a physics engineer working on that at the moment. I think we've identified a separate issue with the way couplers work. Now, people are talking about buffers and couplers. It's actually not the buffers, even though the way that it looks. So what happens in reality, or in the game, sorry, not in reality, what happens in the game is that the
Game
minute
is
two
reality.
vehicles couple, its simulation is so good, it's reality. The minute two vehicles couple, the game deletes the buffers. Yeah, so the buffers are not, they can't get in the way of causing the physics problems. What it is a coupler problem that's causing it. That means that the couplers are not matching up, and that is causing a physics issue. So some of the times you're driving along and derailing for no apparent reason is because of this coupler issue. So we've got a reasonable handle on that one now. That one is waiting to get looked at by the physics engineer once this other one has been resolved. Um, and I think there are one or two other things that have been identified. Another class of issue is on Diesel Legends, for example. You'll start one of the services. You'll notice the O8 is really, really close to some coaches, and in the video example on the forum, it sort of like wobbles around for a bit and then springs into the air. And actually, it's just because the two are too close together. They need to be just brought apart. Adam's nodding. He knows what the problem is. It's a class of issue that we have, and we just need to go through and apply our normal fix for that issue. So there are a number of causes. What we need. And one of the fixes that we put in recently with the buffers was previously they would overlap and then they would madly spring around each other. And that's one of the things that was fixed. Now, we don't think that's what's caused these other issues. There's been something gone with the couplers that's actually the root cause of some of those other problems. And the auto coupler Yana Dunk is probably a same example of this thing where we with the coupler that we understand. So that's one problem with one solution that will fix a broad range of issues. So we've got two or three things underway, which should make a big difference to all of that stuff. So bear with us, and we'll let you know. So I would expect to see the fix for the braking first, and then the fix for the coupling to come later. Because there's no point holding them off, and they're not going to be quick fixes. So we'll get them out as soon as they're done.
Absolutely. And I was going to say something really profound then, and I can't. I've said this a few times already, but if you are experiencing that kind of thing, just let us know on the forums. But again, we've set up a thread. You can see it in the roadmap article, but it's also on the technical reports forum. Please let us know in as much detail as you can what you were doing at the time, and it'll help us out to be able to work out what the source of the issue might be.
Yeah.
Achievements. Someone mentioned actually in the chat when you're going to talk about. Are you going to talk about achievements? It was the next thing on my list. So good on you. Just to give it a little bit of previous before we get into actual achievement side of things. There are some that we've seen a lot of threads about different things regarding progress transfer, and it is intended to say, for instance, that the distance travelled mechanic or the data that you have on distance travelled is ported over into TSW3, which is why you've seen perhaps when you've started to drive a route for the first time, you've seen, hey, an achievement's popped up. It's because that data has been logged from your progress on TSW2 and added to your TSW3, and when you've started that, it's sort of jigged it back into life. Tutorials and journey completions are not, because obviously they should be something that is completed within the game, but we are aware that there are some issues that are being caused because it's saying that you've already completed it and then it's not registering that you've completed it again. We're looking at that, but there is a workaround for the time being. If you are an achievement hunter, is that you can do it you can set up a different profile or a new profile, and you can do it on that one, and it'll unlock in there. I know it's not an ideal solution by any means, but whilst we're looking and investigating, that is a way around it if you are interested in sort of collecting all the achievements for the game. The class 465 was one of the achievements that wasn't working on release. That's now fixed. But we are also aware that there are there's some longer standing achievements that have come from TSW2 that have not been fixed as well. Adam, do you want to give a quick little summary of where we're at with those?
So basically, it almost is in the level of the save game thing where it doesn't affect all platforms. So when we develop this stuff and we go through and testing in the test environments, everything looks good. On platforms such as, for example, PlayStation, that setup gets baked into the software on the Sony systems. And there are instances that we're aware of where if that then becomes a problem, we do have quite an issue there that we can't then change the data. So we are looking into these and trying to narrow down which ones are something we can deal with and which ones we may need to ultimately replace. We haven't gone down that road yet. We haven't made those conclusions. But as we investigate each one of them, there may be bespoke solutions that we need to implement that are not very pleasant. So we are working on it. We are looking at it, and some of it isn't as easy to resolve as many of us would like. So yeah.
Yeah, but there are things. So just on the actual practicalities of some of the achievements, some of them are related to things like distance not unlocking, or there being a collectible that's not now collectible, so you can't finish that achievement. I think there's one on Spirit of Steam that's particularly prominent with that one. But
Well, actually, the collectible stuff is more one of those really frustrating situations where we've gone round and collected all of these in the testing phases and things, and then maybe like Matt was saying, where we'd make a small change, say to an asset, or we'd fix the geometry or something, and suddenly find that the collision box around that asset now means that the collectible is no longer reachable. So that is something that comes straight over to the special projects team, and we're going through those as quickly as we can, certainly, if something is no longer accessible that previously was.
Yeah, and you took the words right out of my mouth, Adam, because that's exactly what I was about to follow up with, and that is kind of why something like the special projects team is going to be really important moving forward. Because when we see these kinds of things, rather than say in the case of the Dresden one, which I can't remember I think it's drive 182 miles or something like that. It means that we can, like as a community team, I can say, well, actually, this is a problem, and we're seeing this crop up quite a lot.
Yeah.
Adam, can you take a look at this, please? And then Adam can take a look at it, hopefully be able to fix it in a reasonable amount of time, and then we can sort of stick it into the next build that we might be able to release it into, rather than waiting for, I think the Dresden one in particular now is about 12 months nearly, or it might be over 12 months now, which is obviously not something that I think any of us think is particularly acceptable. So it's hopefully what will allow us to have that more of a flexibility in the future to do this sort of thing. So I know it's not necessarily the positive news a lot of people were hoping for, but actually longer term we are looking at it, and there are investigations taking place. It's just not quite as simple as it seems to be able to just say, hey, this box isn't ticked, let's tick it again. There is a bit more to it than that, and there are sort of obviously platform limitations that do come into play here sometimes as well. So that's achievements. We were talking about Spirit of Steam. Let's keep on Spirit of Steam. Matt, I'm going to come back to you. There were some things on Spirit of Steam, obviously, that with TSW3, we haven't really talked too much about Spirit of Steam, but I think we're seeing a little bit of feedback from Spirit of Steam around some changes perhaps to the firing mechanic. No, again, I'm probably paraphrasing here, but we had some things that obviously have perhaps change that we would like to either revert or look at what we can do to improve.
Yeah, so this is related to steam generation. So players are finding that the train isn't generating steam as effectively as it used to, and I've seen direct comparisons with TSW2, where you can clearly see that the boiler pressure goes down much more readily than it did previously. So I've been working with the physics and the core engineering team that worked on the core engineering side of the physics. I think we've found out what change happened that shouldn't have happened, and they are now telling me what should do. Effectively, it was quite a big improvement with how drafting works, and it needed a second improvement or a second part of that work to actually finish the picture. So we're looking at the moment to work out what the job is to do that second part of the job, and then actually what you'll see ultimately is a big improvement in it, beyond what it was before. So, but if that's going to take any kind of an amount of time of note, then we'll revert the core change and put at least back to where it was. So I'm working on with the team at the moment to get that one put back. But we do now know what went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, if we come to any conclusions of that's not going to be in the next update. If anything, it will be.
We are still looking into that one, so no.
Yep. Okay. And one more thing, just before because I set Matt a little bit of homework before we had a little meeting earlier, and we chatted about what we wanted to talk about tonight. And I set him a little bit of homework, but we'll come back to that in a second. Adam, back to you again. We'd like a game of tennis tonight. So there are a couple of mentions of Peninsula Corridor and Oakville. as well, because they were the preservation crews, one of the preservation crews' last releases for TSW 2 and 3, I guess. And they're not complete, they're not finished. So what I wanted to just quickly drill down into you in is what was released, what wasn't released, and what is still to come for those two routes.
So key aspects are that we weren't able to get the passenger layer or the passenger version of the timetable into Oakville subdivision.
Which is
In
interesting because
implementing,
a lot of people were very surprised that we were implementing a passenger layer into Oakville.
yeah, it definitely came across with feedback as a Marmite situation. There are a lot of people that liked it, a lot of people that weren't keen on it. That mostly hinged on the fact that we aren't able to bring the the Go Transit license into Trainsim World, and so in order to service the desire that was community driven to bring in some passenger services onto the Oakville subdivision passenger lines, is that would be using the Baby Bullet from California. And we totally get the player feedback. That is why we've sat on it for an awful long time, deciding one way or the other. And to a large extent, we're still working on that. But the crux of the matter is that the simulation of the timetable stopped working. So we couldn't progress that forward, and until we can get that updated simulation going, then we can't bring that layer to it anyway. The services ran into Oakville, I believe, and it was based on the 2021 summer timetable. So it's every service that was running. But yeah, we totally get that it might not be for everyone. And yeah, as I've seen in the chat, the approach was going to be that it would be a new timetable. On the Peninsula Corridor front, we have taken on board the feedback about some aspects had become broken in the latest version. So the updated grade crossings, not all of them worked, and some of them also had some parts of it were working and some parts weren't. So the team have gone back to that. I've implemented a much more rigorous testing process on the grade crossings when we do it to a route. So I can report that we have now run through and redone the level crossings or the grade crossings on Peninsula Corridor, as well as a number of items of feedback on the F40 functionality, as well as the cab car. On the downside, sadly, we still have problems with the timetable, and that's where we were implementing the support for platform information systems. And so in bringing that data in and resolving some of the issues where if you added in the MP15 switcher DLC into your Peninsula Corridor experience, the trains that added then impacted other trains, and therefore you could get into deadlocks. In sorting that out as well, the timetable simulation stopped working. And we've had people looking into this, and we still can't resolve those issues. So we're looking at more options and how we can progress that forward. But what is also locked behind that issue is in the change we made to the UI for Trainsim World 3, we appear to have lost some of the services from the front end. They are still there in the timetable, they are running. So if you spawn on foot, you'd be able to pick cab car services instead of picking the locomotive. But Peninsula Corridor was developed in a very interesting way where you could pick effectively the train on Peninsula Corridor is a locomotive, a bunch of carriages, and effectively a powerless locomotive. Now, nowhere else, funnily enough, nowhere else in all of the trains and routes in Trainsim World do you have drivability at opposite ends with the ability to select different vehicles of the same train. With a multiple unit, for example, it is effectively the same vehicle at either end. So the UI was doing something very specific to support Peninsula Corridor, and that element was lost in Trainsim World 3's implementation. So we're trying to resolve that, resolve some issues with the timetable, and get that unlocked so that we can release the updates to the timetables for Peninsula and for Oakville. We don't have solutions to that yet, but in terms of the grade crossings and the F40 fixes, they are now in testing, and we hope to bring them out soon.
Thanks for that, Adam.
Hopefully, bit of a waffle there.
Thanks for that, Adam. And just finally, before we get on to Matt's homework, the TSW2 content still planned to go out. We just don't have a date for it yet.
Yes, anything that is due to come out, so on that list of TrainSimulator 2 updates, if we are doing subsequently to the release of TrainSimulator 3, if there's been any feedback to any of that content, we have been fixing it in the TrainSimulator 2 version so that when that comes out, it has the latest feedback and implementations as well, and then we can release those improvements to the TrainSimulator 3 version. So it is a bit of a headache managing it, but the special projects team is maintaining both TrainSimulator 2 and TrainSimulator 3 installations for now.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Homework time, Matt. We have talked about a lot over the course of the last hour and 20 minutes. And before we get into some player questions, obviously we only have a finite sized team. We only have there are things that are going to help with efficiency and all that kind of stuff. But realistically, not all of this stuff is going to be done straight away. Not all of this stuff is even going to be done in I guess like the short term to mid term. So my homework that I set to you was actually if we had to put, I guess, like a prioritization list together, what do we think at the moment is sort of maybe top 3 of that list of things that we've talked about to get out to players?
First off, I did do my homework, honestly, but
Yay!
it got eaten. So it's that little monster's always eating my homework. So I'll make it up on the fly.
Great. I was really, really, really happy that this is happening.
Right. So in terms of priority, the priority is always going to be what's causing players problems, what's not working that should work. So it's things like the derailing and buffer issue and save game are right up there. I know that the derailing and buffer issue is a big deal at the moment, and similarly the Add-on Manager, which is also being worked on at the moment. It's difficult to priority when you've got numerous things running at the same time. So those things like derailing, Add-ons Manager, save game are actively being worked on concurrently right now. So as a general rule, when we're talking about priority, it's going to be that kind of thing first. Accessibility is a longer term thing, and probably would be more small improvements made over time, because sometimes it's more about working out what the right improvement is, and then it's quite quick to do. Like one of the big improvements we did with accessibility was just literally cut holes in the red, yellow, and green signal icons. That didn't take very long to do, but working out that was the thing to do to make a big difference took a bit more time to do. So, and then achievements clearly is something that's being worked on. It's a bit more complex to work on, but it's being looked at what we can do there. The Spirit of Steam for the physics that have been broken, again, that's being looked at the moment as well. So my priority is always what's broken that needs fixing, and then secondarily it's then how do we move things forward after that, really.
It's not a bad answer off the fly, I'll give you that. My partner's a teacher, and she would be giving you the stern eyes right now. But I'll let you off, Matt. You managed to salvage it, I think. Okay, all right. So let's talk some questions. If players have questions, we're going to try and tackle bigger issues tonight in the roadmap stream. So if you've got any questions for us, please chuck them in the chat. We're going to probably do about 15 minutes worth of questions, which with Matt and Adam on the stream might mean that we get through 2 questions, but we'll try our best to. I'll try my best to make sure that they're as concise as possible. So a couple of things that came up before we published the roadmap. 465 PIS fonts. I know it's been mentioned quite a lot around sort of how that looks in TSW3 versus how it might look in TSW2. Is that something that we're looking at?
Yes.
That's it. We don't need to know anymore.
It merely falls down to different people, different artists implementing it on their interpretation. So what I've done is I've given it to the same person that's been doing a lot of the other PIS systems to just bring in some consistency and make sure it much closer matches reality.
Cool. Okay. Again, special projects team. That's what they're there for. There was a question about map labels as well. I think a few people were potentially hoping for it to be something, one of the features of TSW3. Matt, can you give us a little bit of an insight into why it might seem more complicated than it looks to incorporate something like map labels into TSW?
So the problem with map labels is there's a couple of problems. One of the problems is what I class, you'll hear me use this phrase or similar, stupid technical reasons. And stupid technical reasons are things that, it's just the way that something's being built. And it means that when if we just put the labels in fact, our dev version of the game, you've possibly seen it when I've streamed previously, has got labels on it. If we try and build that into a production version of the game, it crashes. It introduces great instability, and it's stupid technical reasons. And even then, we did actually talk to the beta testers about, hey, should we put the effort in to make this, just do this and make this available? And they all said it looked a bit rubbish, frankly, and we should do something a bit better. And I don't disagree with them, actually. This is the right call. So we want to do more with the map, but we want to do it in a better way. We've had a couple of really interesting designs in the past about improving the map, and we are going to, at some point, we don't have a date for when we'll look at it yet, we're going to do a pass on it with a view to actually delivering that as a thing. But I don't know when that will come or what it will end up looking like. But we all share your feeling that the map is could be better, could be more useful. Yeah, when we got news on that one, we'll let you know. But don't expect it soon, is all I'm saying on that one.
Yeah, I'm going to get my big old caveat stamp out right now and say it's not being worked on currently, and it's obviously below a lot of those other things in the priority listing that we just talked
Oh
about
yeah.
now. So it's a nice to have, it's an ambition, but it's not something that is currently in production. Something that we are looking at, I've seen it mentioned a couple of times, is the rain on the Class 66 windows. That has been flagged to our art team to take a look at. Obviously, it's evident in the RHTT as well, so that's something that we've flagged to them to take a look at, and I've asked to.
A couple of areas that I pinged that one over to the train team today to look at, but I've also separately pinged over to the QA team, to be honest, to find out how did we miss that. So it's how do we make sure that it doesn't get missed in future, essentially.
Yeah.
So we want to improve our processes, not just fix bugs.
Yeah. Okay. Something else we've seen mentioned quite a lot is lights at stations, because with the new dynamic weather that's come in, what has happened is that we have our lights organized and structured around the time of day that would sort of, I don't know, say in summer you probably have it at 9 p.m. versus winter might be 4 p.m. or something like that, or 5 p.m. or something. Because of the dynamic weather, it can make things a little bit darker in the game, and obviously when say for instance you come in at 4 o'clock, it might be a hell of a lot darker than it was previously. And what that means is, because the lights have been set up for to come on at 5 p.m. as they would actually do in real life, they would probably come out on a timer rather than a light sensitivity meter. But what that means is that sometimes players are coming into stations in pitch darkness, which obviously you would like to think wouldn't happen in real life, even though it might do in some instances. So, Matt, is there anything that we're looking to do on that front?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to make it light sensitive. So, because the difference between whether the lights come on at, you look at between the winter, July and December, in terms of when is it light and when is it dark, and then throw in heavy clouds and rain and thunderstorms, when how that affects things being light and dark. You can't have a good setting for a single time at all, short of having the lights on all the time. So we're actually going to make that work just purely by sampling the light levels, so that if the light levels are below a certain point, the lights will come on station. So that's one of the projects that's with the tech art team at the moment.
Cool. Yeah, some people mentioning modern street lighting is normally light sensitive these days. Obviously, modern, there are some older routes in game as well. So obviously, I think what we're going to try and do is come up with a solution that works across all of our different routes, rather than sort of on a case by case. Spirit of Steam Auto Fireman. Actually, no, I've got two Spirit of Steam questions next to each other, so I'll include both of those. Two of them are kind of outstanding things that we've talked about already, which is the Auto Fireman for Spirit of Steam, and the second part is the Blood and Custard deliveries on 9th Gen, which I think we put into release notes, but doesn't seem to have gone out to players. So, do we have?
I still need to chase up on to find out about the Blood and Custard delivery. So that one was still on me to have a look at. And do you mean manual fireman?
Sorry, yes, manual fireman. I put auto on there, but that's because I'm talking at the same time.
That's no problem. So the manual firing stuff, this is just generally the advancements of Steam physics, and the bit that's been done, half done, that's kind of gone out and maybe shouldn't have gone out, or maybe been finished a bit more. The bit that's effectively a step backwards at the moment on Steam physics is kind of some of that work. So we haven't actually got to the manual firing side of it yet because we want to get the actual firing behavior right first. So that's what's in there. We need to get that fixed, and then the engineer in question will get back on with the manual firing stuff. So we're getting there, but let's get the steam physics working properly first.
Okay, cool. I've noticed that there is a couple of questions for Adam that he's put into our script, so I'm going to flag one to him right away because I know that.
Not at all that I want to
No,
inject myself into the conversation
no,
at all.
absolutely
No.
not. I want it to be. I want this to be not a trialogue, I guess, not a dialogue. Let's go for a trialogue. I'm not sure that's a word.
New
Uh,
words.
let's use it. I want to use that more often. With the expansion of the partners program, is onboarding them a little bit more easy now than perhaps it was in TSW2 or a year, 2 years ago, Adam?
It's entirely time based in that when my team began supporting them, we were merely getting to grips with the partners that we already had and made sure that we're servicing them with all their technical supply and everything that they need, and documentation and tools and everything like that. So now that we are fully up to speed with them, we have gone out and looked at more third parties, and yeah, we're now in a better place to onboard more people, and that's why we're in that place.
Nice. And another kind of a partners question. Any news on the 420? I know that this has been on the right. I think this actually might be the item that's been on the roadmap for the longest out of everything. The 420. There is a reason for that, and Adam, you're probably able to give a little bit more context than I can.
Yes, it may well have taken the mantle from the 313. But effectively, Mike is a partner. He's not under the same delivery requirements or schedules or anything that Dovetail is for full time. So it is whenever Mike is going to progress or finish that loco. He has been working on other things recently. Lots more German content to come, and the
We have to put our hands
420.
up a little bit. We have to put our hands up a
We've
bit.
been
So we've
using
been
them as
keeping
well,
Mike
haven't we?
very, very
Yeah.
busy, and he's been doing fantastic work and continues to do fantastic work. And it is getting in the way of the 420 being done. So yes, it's. I know that Mike is very keen to get it done. It is still on the radar to be done.
Yes.
But I have had word that it will be to TSW3 only.
Yeah, and that's reflected in the roadmap right now as well. Okay, let's have a look. Is there anything else we want to talk about? Rail driver is an interesting one because there's a question about should we get it out of invert commas beta? Are we going to standardize it? What kind of Adam? I know that your team has done a lot with rail driver, particularly on older routes. What because there's a little bit of an alien concept to me. What work goes into making something compatible for Raildriver, and then how does that differ on a route to route basis? Because obviously standardization is important, but it's a lofty aim when everything is quite as different as it is.
And that's really the difficulty that we found with implementation of the rail driver is that you have trains from many different geographical regions and many different operating practices. And given that the rail driver is actually based on American content, I believe, American railroad traction, trying to then map down the way that the controls work on, say, a German shunter to an American freight locomotive, or an English DMU onto a locomotive mapping, it has been really hard. And from what we found on the special projects team is that it again has boiled down to different developers taking a different approach to how they map it and how they think it should feel when they're using the rail driver. So we are constantly looking at feedback. We've been working with several members from the community as well about the level of standardization we want to go to. So it is an ongoing process. We are trying to narrow down the number of people that work on the rail driver compatibility to try and narrow down inconsistencies. But certainly doing everything we can and taking feedback on board all the time about how to make sure it is a consistent experience.
Yeah, and I think players appreciate that, and it's something that we were talking about, say, with accessibility joysticks, and I know it's a very, very simplified version of that, but obviously there are things that need to be inputted into it that would perhaps be slightly contra to what you would expect them to be. So yeah, I think that it's something that we want to work towards. We're not going to get it right every single time with Raildriver, but it's something that, as I say, when we're looking at moving forward with Raildriver compatibility, it's something that we want to try and bring a little bit more structure to.
I mean, just also to interject, as some may know, and it is UK only, Alan Thompson Simulation do provide, have developed their own hardware for train simulation. Now, I'm really excited to see if they bring that to Train Sim World and what that might mean. I don't have any details. They haven't said that's what they're going to do. But if we bring them on board, we have these conversations, that could well be something that appears in the future. Who knows?
Interesting. Yeah, again, no confirmation here at all. Nothing to run off and skip to tell everybody about. It's something that, as I say, they're very like putting two and two together and maybe making five.
I mean, there is a limitation there that means it's actually not on ATS to actually think about it. We don't have an API for them to look into, so we need to finish that API so that anybody can add their own hardware. So there's a sequence of things that need to be done there, but we're talking. Let's put it that way.
There was a question
Man,
about
get it
API.
finished. Get it finished, man. Get it finished.
There was a question about API actually that's literally in the chat right now, asking about if there is likely to be an API in the future. And by the sounds of things, there is work going on, but there's not anything that we would want to talk about at this stage.
Let me wait until it's a thing, because I've seen all sorts of exciting stuff, but I mean, the number of times we see exciting stuff and it doesn't quite go out to the release looking like that. So let's wait until we see where it ends up, and then we can talk to you about what that API can do. And it'll be full of all sorts of I don't understand any of this, but it sounds cool. But because it is what I've seen looks very exciting.
It's the challenge of game design, isn't it? Where most things that you develop probably won't end up seeing the light of day, and it's kind of the sad realization of that of development, really, and lofty goals and having really kind of all of these shiny bells and whistles, and actually when push comes to shove, it's either not achievable or something stopping it from working, and only really the kind of the creme de la creme sort of make it to the release window. Okay, you know what? I think that's a really good note to finish on for tonight. We've gone through a lot of content. If you've come in a little bit late, you're welcome to watch the stream again from the start, because we cover quite a lot over the course of the last hour and a half or so. But if you have come late and you've not read the roadmap, please do. But if you need a little bit of a reminder, there are 4 new items on the roadmap, including a UK route, a US loco, a German route, and a UK route that's being developed by Rivet Games. We've added in the new journeys pack as individual add-ons, so expect that to release in the near future. There are new special projects team who were previously known as the Preservation Crew, including the HST Livery Designer functionality, DBBR 187 audio improvements, and a few other bits and pieces on there. Check it out. It's really worth taking a look at, even if it is quite long. Hey, I wrote it after all, and you know that I like to talk. So on that note, I'm going to call it an evening for the evening. Thank you very much, Adam, for joining us.
Thank you.
Been great to have you back on the streams. And Matt, as a pleasure as always. Thanks very much for joining us again.
Thank you.
We will. I don't think we have a Railfan TV stream next week, as it stands. We have one for Train Simulator Classic next week, and we will be back in a couple of weeks' time. So have a lovely evening, everybody, and stay safe out there. Enjoy. That was a rubbish sign off. Sorry, everyone. See you later. And I'm going to sort of sit here because I've actually not prepped the ending bit yet. There we go. And it is... Thanks for watching. See you later.